adding 8-time Pro Bowler Von Miller to a star-studded defense. 32-year-old has 4.5 sacks this year. Chiefs yesterday adding pass rush help, acquiring Melvin Ingram from the Steelers. Kansas City desperately needed to get after the quarterback, especially this weekend when they take on Aaron Rodgers. And then there was Odell Beckham, who is still in Cleveland. The Browns wide receiver averaging career lows across the board. But the story yesterday was not just that he stayed. It was all the things that happened before the deadline. You may have seen this yesterday morning, sort of out of nowhere. Odell Beckham's father commenting on an 11-minute Instagram video of clips showing Odell being open but not being passed to. His comments, along with a bunch of hashtags, read, "generally behind the scenes, but not today." He posted that video from YouTube. Meanwhile, about 4 hours before the deadline, Cleveland native LeBron James posted, "OBJ will show again why he's special. Wide receiver one, hashtag free OBJ." And it just so happens that we have a Cleveland Browns beat reporter in our studio today, Kimberly Martin. All kidding aside, covers them, it feels like, every week, including the last two, and you have them this week as well. So, what were you hearing out of Cleveland, for those who weren't following your Twitter feed yesterday, about the way the Browns were looking at this leading up to the deadline?
Yeah, I was watching the show yesterday. I heard everybody saying, trade Odell, trade Odell. My biggest thing was to who and for what, because you need parties, interested parties, to trade for him. My understanding has been for weeks that he was not going to get traded. And when you talk to teams around the league, there are two issues. One, the salary. Two, some teams feel like he's declined. That's not my opinion. That's how other teams around the league look at Odell Beckham. Now, if you want to make a case for Odell is open, there are plays that show that where Baker misses him. There are plays where Odell drops the ball. So overall, a huge failure in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, and now they have to sort of put the pieces back together again, even though they were never apart, but they certainly seem to be. What do you make of this?
No, I understand where Kimberly's coming from. I was not one who thought that Odell should be traded, and he didn't, but putting the pieces back together is kind of hard because Odell has shown some maturity in that he hasn't been outspoken about being unhappy. But certainly when your dad is posting stuff, it suggests that you're unhappy. I don't know his relationship with his father, but I would expect that Odell Beckham Sr. would not be posting these 11-minute clips unless Odell Beckham Jr. was somewhat unhappy.
And if you were upset about it, you would have been like, hey.
I know. You would step out and say, nah, he doesn't speak for me, so that's odd. And then having LeBron James come in and tweet it also, which LeBron's like a Cowboys fan anyway, right? Like, why are you meddling in these affairs? Right. It just makes it for a very uncomfortable morning in the locker room that's already uncomfortable because they've been underachieving.
Yes. Listen, I mean, we had a conversation yesterday about coincidences and how you don't believe them. I don't believe in coincidences under any circumstances. But in a situation where on the day of the trade deadline, these things are posted, Dominique Foxworth, is that a coincidence, or was that Odell Beckham trying to get out of Cleveland yesterday when he still could?
I mean, you and I are parents, so you understand that you get emotional about certain things. So it's possible that his dad just went off on a whim and was sending these things out.
On that day. He's never done it before.
I
didn't know his father had an Instagram account until yesterday.
I said it's possible. I think it's probably unlikely. And whether it's true or false, it doesn't matter. What matters is how it's going to impact that locker room. Right. And I don't think that anyone in that locker room suspects that it was a complete coincidence.
RG3, what do you think?
Listen, I get everything about the dad, but Odell Beckham, he's not hurting this Cleveland Browns team, but they are hurting him. They're hurting his legacy, his reputation. I mean, people out there disrespecting him, saying he can't play anymore, he can't catch it just because of some of the injuries that he's had and some of the drops. But when you look at Odell Beckham Jr., him and Baker can't even make cereal together, all right? Because they can't decide what milk to use. Is it 2% whole milk? Maybe we use a little goat milk, or maybe we'll just go with kefir. These two guys are not on the same page. They don't mix. They don't mix well together, right? And when I look at Odell, you watch the tape, it tells a different story. He is getting open, but him and Baker aren't on the same page, and it's also this offensive scheme. This scheme is not built to have a primary receiver, and Odell Beckham is that guy. When you pay him that much money, he has to be the guy you're trying to get the ball to 4 or 5 times in the first 15 plays, and that's just not what they're doing with him.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Tim, I want to hear your perspective as a quarterback, because sometimes the reality can be that it's not Baker and it's not Odell, it's that they just don't have chemistry, that for whatever reason they just don't fit together, sort of the way RG3 said, and it doesn't mean that it's all about one side or the other side. What are you seeing through a quarterback's eyes, Tim?
Yeah, well, look, that can be true. I see it differently. I mean, look at what Kevin Stefanski did in Minnesota. He had 2 wide receivers go absolutely off. And so this idea that receivers can't be featured in what they're doing in Cleveland, I would disagree with. I think when you look at, kind of what's happened, look, you can always show wide receivers that appear to be open at times. Like that's always the case. Just like you could show when guys drop the football. Like it doesn't serve anybody in a positive way when you're sitting at 4-4 in a division that's pretty closely contested and certainly still up for grabs for at least 3 teams. So look, what I see is a guy that's super talented, but he wants everything to revolve around him. And unfortunately, football doesn't work that way. So, and listen, maybe it's unfair to say it and put it all on Odell because it's his father that is doing this, but I just would agree with Dominique in the sense that, okay, unless you come out and say, like, look, my dad doesn't speak for me on this stuff, it's kind of like you're co-signing it. And I think it just kind of feeds a narrative of it's just all about me, and less about the fact that I got a quarterback that's playing with a harness on his shoulder because he just tore his labrum and they're telling him his season should be over and he needs surgery. Like, that's also going on in Cleveland. And so I just think it ends up being bad for your locker room, which I also think Dominique was kind of alluding to.
And there's also a story that I saw this morning that Baker Mayfield's wife is on social media liking posts that defend him and criticize
I need all the family. I need the family. I need the family to just back up. Because don't get it twisted. I'm ride or die. However, you're not helping anybody. You really are not. Because now then the players are asked about what your family's doing. It really doesn't serve anybody any good. We understand, obviously, Baker's wife is going to support Baker.
Yeah.
So
we don't need you to like posts for us to know that. We know whose side you're on.
Right.
These proxy wars are not good for anybody.
But this is all part of the issue in Cleveland because you watch the offense, as I do, week after week, and it looks broken at times because of the injuries and because, as Kevin Stefanski, great coach. However, how many times are we going to hear, I need to do a better job of getting Odell Beckham the ball? Like, I need to do a better job. Either do it or don't.
Honestly, in that case, I think Kevin Stefanski is just saying what he thinks he's supposed to say. Because in his heart of hearts, I don't think he believes that he needs to do anything different. He thinks that the problem is probably, I think that he believes the problem is with one of those 2 players, either with Baker or with Odell. He's not going to say that publicly because he knows better, but maybe we need to find out what his wife or what his dad thinks. Maybe they will come out and tell us how he really feels about this whole situation, because that's the move, I guess.
RG3, put a ribbon on this thing for me here, because now they all got to walk back in that building, right? They all got to go back to practice, and they got a big game. Every game the rest of the way is a big game for this team for all the reasons Tim just said. So how do they do that? What happens today, RG3?
Yeah, it's a very awkward situation in that locker room, and I think that's what Odell Beckham wants, because he knows if he's not going to get traded, if he can make enough noise, maybe they might throw him the ball a little bit more. So when Tim's talking about the receivers in Minnesota that Stefanski had and how they ran that system, they're not running the system the same way that they're running it in Cleveland. So it's not that the receivers can't be featured. I agree, there's something off between Baker and OBJ, and I know that offense like the back of my hand because I was in that system for my entire career. And that's not the way the offense is run. There is no, hey, this is the star guy, try to get him the ball. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, throw your check down, and if he happens to be open on that play, you throw him the ball. And I just don't think that OBJ, works that way. And when you talk about a receiver and wanting everything to revolve around him, come on, man, that's exactly how they are. And the great ones are that way. And OBJ, I feel like, is still one of those greats.
Yeah, look, Chris Carter once said it. Go ahead, Tim. I'll give you. Go ahead.
There's everybody wants the ball. Where the quarterbacks want to throw it, but this idea that big self